With thousands displaced by the conflict in Ethiopia's Oromo region, Amhara region militias stand accused of abuses against civilians. We visit a displacement camp in Debre Berhan to speak with people fleeing the conflict.
See how Nigeria promises a greener future through technology. Joining the global clarion call.
Hello, and thanks for tuning into the show that goes around the continent to bring you stories near and far. I'm Chamberlain Osowa, Channels Television here in Abuja. I'm joined by Vincent Makori from Voice of America in Washington.
Well, thanks. I'm Vincent Makori at the Voice of America. Happy to be with you again for another edition of Africa 54. Let's start off with the latest from Nigeria. Chamberlain Uso in Abuja brings you that story.
Nigeria has joined the global clarion call for a greener future as it celebrates the 2022 World Maritime Day with the theme New Technologies for Greener Shipping. The Minister of Transportation, Engineer Muazu Jaji Sambo, says there is need for stakeholders in the maritime sector to begin exploring ways to transition into a greener and more sustainable future, as Nigeria will not be left behind in the global drive in line with the campaign by the International Maritime Organization.
New technologies for greener shipping. That's the chosen theme to celebrate the 2022 World Maritime Day, with focused attention on the importance of shipping and other maritime activities. The theme turns the spotlight on the role of emerging technologies to support a green transition of the maritime sector into a sustainable future, where the Minister of Environment, Mohammed Abubakar, says aligns with President Muhammadu Buhari's vision on clean energy.
The theme is apt, is in tandem with Mr. President's vision for net zero, meaning we intend to eliminate as much as we can greenhouse gas emissions, and then transit in the next 15 years from fossil fuel to renewables. And there is no such industry that is key to achieving this milestone than the Ministry of Transportation and its agencies.
The host, who is the Federal Minister of Transportation, restates his commitment to achieve greener shipping in line with the International Maritime Organization campaign.
This partnership must be cultivated globally and nationally. For us as a nation, the entire maritime community has a role to play in bringing about a greener and sustainable maritime industry in the areas of resource mobilization, maritime training, awareness, job creation, and full implementation of maritime laws and regulations.
This year's theme is linked to specific aspects of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals 9, 13, 14, and 17 on industry, innovation, and infrastructure, climate action, and sustainable use of the oceans, seas, and marine resources, and the importance of partnerships and implementation to achieve these goals. At a time when the world is moving towards greener shipping, these stakeholders are determined to ensure that Nigeria's maritime sector is not left behind.
Well, joining us to discuss this is the Admiral Superintendent, Naval Shipyard Limited, Port Harcourt, Rear Admiral John Oyegade. Glad to have you on Africa 54.
Thanks so much for having me on the show. Thank you, Chamberlain.
All right, so the theme for this year reflects the need to support a green transition of the maritime sector into a sustainable future. Do you see this solving the challenges of the industry and building a greener sector in the post-pandemic world?
Shipping, as you know, contributes about 3% of global CO2 emissions, and that is projected to rise to about 17% by 2030 at the current levels of emission. So while we try to cut down emissions by stemming, by cutting down CO2 on the position of fossil fuel, we also have to look at the flip side, which is the effect on shipping when we migrate to cleaner forms of fueling like LNG, like biofuel. So it's a delicate challenge that the world has to consider at this time.
Well, it also turns out that the World Maritime Day this time links to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, particularly SDGs 13 and 14 on climate action and sustainable use of the ocean, seas, and maritime resources innovation. Now, do you see Nigeria achieving these goals?
Okay, the SDGs, what they were promulgated by the United Nations in 2015, were to be achieved by 2030. We leaves us with only about 8 years to accomplish these SDGs. Having said that, we have only about 8 years to go, and some of the goals are tied to shipping specifically. Goals 13 and 14 particularly are tied to shipping directly. So as we try to go greener in shipping, we also have to look at the impact on the attainment of those goals. And with the time on our hands at the moment and the levels of investment currently, I think it will be a very optimistic order to assume that we will accomplish these goals by 2030. But having said that, I think the government is not resting on its laurels. You will remember that in January this year, the Vice President, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, inaugurated an expanded partnership committee on sustainable blue economy, which is chaired by himself and has membership cutting across all strata of the industry, including the security sector. And I believe that with such an approach, we should look to galvanize action towards making reasonable progress in attaining these goals. But I think it's highly optimistic to think that we'll meet them all by 2030. Well, as the world moves towards greener shipping, Nigeria must not be left behind. And greener shipping as a concept is novel, it's new for us, not only in Nigeria, in the world at large. So particularly in Nigeria, for us not to be left behind, we have to, in my view, approach a three-pronged strategy. Number one, there has to be appropriate policy formulation to galvanize action. And by this, I mean that the various agencies that have a role to play in stemming reduction in CO2 emission in the sector have to coalesce. There has to be a strategy, or there has to be a policy that galvanizes their action towards achieving a particular goal. And what are those goals? I was able to set goals I want to achieve in 5 years' time, and in 10 years' time, and so on and so forth, and begin to work towards them. Number two, there has to be an appropriate regulatory framework in respect of innovative technologies. I'll give you an example. Hydrogen, which is one of the greener fuels that we use in the sector, requires use of cryogenic tanks. And when there are no regulations in the country on how these tanks are fabricated and how they are to be employed on vessels. So we need such regulatory framework. And then, of course, there has to be pragmatic funding for R&D. And on this, I'd like to address particularly MIMASA's cabotage vessel funding financing funds. I think that funds should be deployed aggressively towards R&D, developing greener forms of fueling and greener and more efficient shipping in the country. And on this, I'd like to state that institutions like Nigerian Navy, with its research center in Sapele, would be available to assist in this research. The shipyard where also command is available, Nevadoc is available, so institutions that can conduct research and research and innovation towards achieving greener shipping in the country. Thank you very much.
All right, then Rear Admiral John Oyegade, Admiral Superintendent, Naval Shipyard Limited in Port Harcourt. Thank you very much indeed for your time today.
Thanks, somebody. Have a nice day.
Well, welcome back to Africa 54. I'm Vincent McCory in Washington. The United Nations says thousands of people have been displaced by the conflict in Ethiopia's Oromo region, where the rebel Oromo Liberation Army has been launching attacks since June, while Amhara region militias have been accused of abuses against civilians. Reporter Henry Wilkins visited a displacement camp in Debre Berhan to speak to those fleeing the conflict who are arriving every day.
Zainab Ali Saeed and her sister arrived in this camp in Debre Berhan the day before VOA visited in September. She fled her town located 100 kilometers from Ethiopia's Addis Ababa after 2 of her children were killed by the Oromo Liberation Army, OLA, because of their Amhara ethnicity, she says.
I have lost my 2 kids. One of them, they found his body at the local gas station. The OLA must have killed him on his way there as he drove a tuk-tuk. He was 25. His brother was 20.
Asked why the violence had suddenly spread to their hometown, Zainab's sister said she doesn't know what happened to the peaceful coexistence between ethnic Amharas and Oromos.
We used to live and eat together. We didn't see any danger coming. The first we knew of it was the attack. That is it. If they had told us, we would have left.
She told VOA she has never known violence like this. Stories like theirs are becoming more common. Rights groups are referring to the fighting in Oromia as Ethiopia's other conflict, separate from the one in the Tigray region. Analysts warn that the fighting in Oromia is a major threat to Ethiopia's federal government, led by Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed. The violence stems not just from the OLA, but also ethnic Amhara militias killing Oromo people. Data from the Armed Conflict Location and Event Data Project shows hundreds of civilians have been killed by Amhara militias in the last year. The manager of this camp for displaced people, known as China Camp, says it didn't exist in January. Violence in the Oromia conflict has increased to such an extent that 15,000 people now live there, however.
In Debre Berhan town, there are 37,000 displaced people. They are displaced in Wolega. In this camp alone, there are more than 15,000 IDPs. Women, the elderly, kids, people with disabilities live here. Regarding humanitarian aid, it's hard. We need aid.
Despite the clear need for aid, humanitarian organisations say that because of lack of access and available data, they do not know the full extent of the crisis.
So we know that there's ongoing clashes and there's violence that's affecting civilians. What we don't know is if there are displacements or if there are significant losses in civilian infrastructure that require humanitarian assistance. That we don't know. For the conflict affected and the conflict displaced, those numbers just haven't been made available.
Accurate information on what is happening in large parts of Oromia is also scarce due to insecurity and a lack of adequate media coverage, analysts say. Henry Wilkins for VOA News, Debre Berhan, Ethiopia.
It's time now for a short break, and as we do, we remind you to visit our website, channelstv.com, for news and programming around the clock. You can also find us at youtube.com/channelsweb. Still to come, Egypt has implemented a new import rule that has resulted in shortages of everyday necessities and more. The new import rules in Egypt, brought in earlier this year to stem shrinking foreign currency reserves and shore up the pound, has resulted in shortages of goods, slowed imports, lifting inflation near a 4-year high. Unfortunately, for those planning purchases like Christine, buying a small automatic car this year is not feasible. On February 22nd, the Central Bank of Egypt implemented a new requirement indicating that the country will only accept letters of credit in the execution of import operations.
Christine, a lad from Eastern Cairo, had been hoping to buy a small automatic car this year. But rules preventing importers trading in scarce dollars put paid to that, and she is having to get around on her bicycle instead. Unfortunately for those planning purchases like her, the new import rules brought in earlier this year to stem shrinking foreign currency reserves and shore up the pound resulted in shortages of goods, lifting inflation near 4-year highs.
Every time I save up some money for this, car prices jump higher than my savings. Now I don't have a car. I use the bicycle for transportation.
The car sector has been among the worst hit, but traders say the import crunch has affected everything from electrical components to textiles and spare parts.
With time passing and the delay in providing foreign currency, the shortage became severe because there is no stock to cover the demand. Importers cannot get their cargoes out of the ports and they can't answer to their commitments towards the foreign manufacturers.
In April to June, imports of consumer durables fell by 57% from the same quarter the year before. That's according to the most recent quarterly figures from the State Statistics Agency. Into the summer, some clothing retailers, unable to secure new seasonal stock, left winter collections on the shelves. Bankers say dollars have largely disappeared from the interbank market, and traders say that for most people, securing hard currency through a letter of credit to be able to import goods has become a long and frustrating task. Foreign currency reserves have slipped to $33 billion in July from $41 billion in January, despite an influx of cash from Egypt's Gulf allies and the new import rules. With rising debt, Egypt has been negotiating for a new loan with the International Monetary Fund since March to help shore up its economy.
Nigeria's finance, budget and national planning minister says the country is ready for business. In a sit-down interview with the VOA's Peter Clotty, Zainab Shamsuna Ahmed says the economic outlook of Nigeria ahead of next February's general election is positive, and she addressed investor concerns about the economic outlook in the short term and medium term, saying Nigeria's economy has seen growth in spite of the pandemic that has battered growth in most of the world. Remarks come during the Nigeria International Economic Partnership Forum on the sidelines of the United Nations General Assembly.
We're here in New York seeking to strengthen our partnerships and also forge new ones, inviting investors to come and invest in the different sectors in our economy, from the agricultural sector to energy, manufacturing, financial services is doing very well in the country, but information technology and the digital economy is also providing a lot of opportunities, especially for the digital survey entrepreneurs. So Nigeria is ready for business and it's open, and we're listening to what the investors want, and we will design fiscal policies that will support investments inflow into the country.
Talking about investors coming to Nigeria, how will their investments be protected? Talking about policies to invest in Nigeria, how will they be protected in terms of when they invest, the profits they get to repatriate it back to where they are or reinvest it? How will their investment be protected, if I may ask you, Madam?
So when you say protection, let me just say that Nigeria has never appropriated any investment. So when you come in as an investor in Nigeria, your investment is safe. Government will not take over your investment.
Now, what assurances are you giving these investors? Because I heard you speak at the event, you tell them, come and invest, Nigeria is ready for business. What assurances are you giving them that will make it attractive for them to come and invest in Nigeria?
Well, we're telling them that you get the highest returns on investment in Nigeria. Check the numbers. There is nowhere in the African continent where you get the kind of returns that you get in Nigeria. Are there risks? Yes, risks are there. In some cases, risks are elevated, but that's the same reason why investors do their due diligence before coming in. So the ones that have been able to come in should tell you that they're making good profits. And we've told investors, look into the kind of investors that are in Nigeria and the kind of returns that they are making. That is a signal that shows that Nigeria's economy is really a good place to do business.
A company specializing in sustainable transportation has just launched 2 types of electric motorbikes to boost the country's economy and reduce emissions in the Republic of Benin. The 2 electric two-wheelers do not require maintenance, such as changing oil and spark plugs, making them cheaper in the long run. The driver only needs to plan ahead and pay attention to his dashboard to make sure the motorbike does not run flat.
Cotonou resident Aruna Damasi ignites his new electronic motorbike as he slides silently among the throttling column of motorcycles swarming through rush hour traffic in Benin's capital. The 40-year-old informal trader is the proud new owner of an electric two-wheeler made by India-based company M Auto, which launched bikes in Benin and Togo this year.
It's an ecological motorcycle, which means it doesn't pollute, it doesn't have smoke. So compared to a petrol motorcycle, you have to agree with me that I am helping in the protection of my environment.
When the battery runs low, drivers do not have to stop and recharge, but simply replace it at one of M Auto's 14 swapping stations in Cotonou for 1,000 CFA francs. Emmanuel Ahuwendo owns the bigger M Auto model called the Commando. He uses it for deliveries and other jobs. For him and the manufacturers, driving an electric motorcycle is first of all an economical choice.
Non seulement elle pollue l'environnement.
Not only do the regular ones pollute the environment, there are so many parts to change. Every week, every weekend, you have to change the oil. There are small parts to change very frequently, like the chain, and you even have to clean the carburetor sometimes. So this new motorcycle I find to be more economical. I only have to change the battery and it starts.
Donc, cette nouvelle moto,
le plus difficile, mais
we believe in the fact that the electric argument alone is not enough. People have to find an economic benefit. And once they've found that, the ecological arguments will be added. And today, we have customers from all social categories. We have a lot of women who ride our motorcycles, and it's a real pleasure.
Et donc aujourd'hui, on a des clients dans toutes les catégories.
Would-be drivers are concerned about having to plan routes around battery points rather than filling up from contraband petrol vendors found on almost every street corner. M Auto also has to look into producing longer-lasting batteries, as typically their scooters run out of power after between 70 and 120 kilometers, according to a swapping station employee. Yet, M Auto has sold over 2,000 e-mopeds since May and aims to make more than 15,000 on East and West African roads by year-end.
Well, and that's our show for today. You can find all the continent's top news and world news online at voaafrica.com. Check it out. Vincent McCord in Washington, Channels Television, has our last word.
We look forward to bringing you another show next week. Don't forget, channelstv.com is your source for news and other programming. I'm Chamberlain, so thank you for watching. Goodbye.